black screen. Wind howls. A single lantern stutters in the dark. They say winter at sea doesn't kill you with waves, it kills you with the hours between them. When the wind is a knife, when ropes turn to iron rods, when breath becomes frost in your beard, a ship is not a ship, it is a colder kind of prison. And yet, the pirates who sailed the Grey Atlantic, the Baltic, the Grand Banks in January, they lived, not by luck, not by mercy, by methods so strange you'd swear they were cursed legends until you smell the smoke and feel the heat. Lantern flare. Footsteps on wet planks. We begin with the first fire, the ugliest one. Tallow, the heat that stinks like sin, they called it tallow. Pirate warmth boiled down from the bellies of beasts. Cow, pig, goat, whatever fat a quartermaster could pry from a portside butcher or strip from a raided hold. The cook would hack pale chunks into a dented pot and the ship would breathe in a new smell. Thick, greasy, indescribably foul, the scent of a candle made from a slaughterhouse. Hold the pot, snapped steam veiling her eyes, lids raw from smoke. The fat collapsed into yellow gloss. A ladle stirred. Threads of sinew blackened, then came the pour, into shells, into clay cups, into scraps of tin with twisted rag wicks. Stinking stars scattered across the lower deck. Tallow burned slow, hotter than damp driftwood, truer than any plank fire splashed by a rogue wave. It smoked the beams black, greased the air, and licked at fingers numb to bone. A single tallow cup warmed a hand. 3 near a hammock softened the night. 10 in the gun deck, and men could feel their toes again. It wasn't only heat. They smeared tallow into rope to push back rot, rubbed it into boots and canvas, even along brows and cheeks to seal windburn. When the bread ran thin, some gnawed it like a candle, eyes closed against nausea. Survival at sea tastes like pride swallowed whole. But the real trick was placement. A lamp too near the canvas, and your mast became a torch. Too near the barrel staves, and the rum warmed dangerously, an invitation to a different kind of fire. Crews learned the geometry of flame stones around the base, a wet rag rim, a watch posted not for enemies, but for sparks. Why in God's dark ocean? A new hand gag. Would anyone choose this? Because it works. The boatswain muttered, holding his palms over the sour glow. And because freezing is worse. The sea respects only results. Tallow kept crews alive, and yet even its rancid comfort had borders. Smoke choked lungs. Wicks gutter. The smell crawled into dreams. So pirates sought a steadier hearth, the only legal fire aboard. The galley hearth, a brick heart in a wooden world, high crackle of coals. A low, living red inside stone. On most ships, fire was a treason that could kill 100 men before a scream could be formed. But one place was blessed, walled by brick or tile, mortared into the ship's belly like a cathedral built for stew. The galley. The oven sat low near the keel for balance, near the waterline for safety, sealed, hooded, jealously tended by whomever the crew dared call cook. Flour dusted the stones. Salt cod hung like parchment. A pot forever muttered on the great burgoo fish, and whatever dared swim too close to a pirate's hook. In winter, the galley was not a kitchen. It was sanctuary. The rules were unwritten but ironed. No crowding the fire while the lid was off. No wool sleeves near the throat of the flame. No sudden drafts that spit sparks. Men queued along bulkheads, palms turned to heat, eyes half shut the way a man listens to a prayer. Keep it breathing, the quartermaster would say, counting out wood like coins. Fuel was treasure. A log lost overboard was a night stolen from the crew, so they timed their warmth, bread first, beans next, then bodies, leaning in as the oven bricks held their red. Heat was rationed like rum. Politics took root in that glow. A man with galley duty could grant 5 minutes of saved fingers, or deny it to a rival who'd cheated at dice. Rumors hardened thereto, about mutinies hatched and rescinded, about lost treasures and cursed legends pulled from the mouths of men thawing in the same halo of warmth. Take a step away, and the corridor bit like steel. Take 2 and your breath smoked again. So crews learned to layer the ship-warm core, cold ribs. Bedding crept closer to the galley, hammocks slung in sly arcs that stole a ribbon of heat. Some nights the oven slept dull and black, no fuel, no courage to coax more from ash. On those nights the men shivered in silence, listening to timbers flex like old bones. And one by one they remembered there was another place on board that stayed dry, warm and quiet. A place most men fear, the powder magazine, warmth behind a door that must never slam a door latch. A hush as if the ship itself is holding breath. Gunpowder hates wetness, and ships are wet by nature. To keep the powder dry, carpenters built a sanctum within the hull, thick, planked, wool-lined, shuttered against the sea. No open flame, no iron nails near a charge, no boots that might spark against stone. And yet step inside and the air was gentle. No draft, no spray, no teeth in the wind. Warmth gathered simply because the cold could not enter. Just an hour. A helmsman would whisper, easing his shoulders down against the blessed wood. Half, the powder monkey hissed, boy guardian of a dragon's hoard. And no pipes. They followed rituals like prayers. Lanterns outside only, their glow guttering through oiled parchment windows. Felt slippers over feet, hands rubbed together, never clapped, weapons left beyond reach. A man in winter will agree to anything for a quiet warmth. Some captains banned sleeping there outright, others pretended not to see. The same way a priest pretends not to watch a starving man steal a loaf. A few assigned night watch inside the magazine, not to guard the powder, but to guard the sleepers from their own clumsy dreams. Because the sea tells stories of ships that vanished not under cannon or storm, but in a single bright heartbeat. Some say a wool cap slid, a nail scratched, a spark whispered into life, and the dawn found only black rain. Still, the temptation ruled the darkest watches. For an hour in the magazine could gift a man back his hands. Could return his fingers from wood to flesh. Why risk it, you ask? Because cold is a slow murder and risk is a bargain pirates understand. Yet even the magazine could not warm a whole crew. So on nights when the sky froze hard and every rope sang like a saw, they turned to something stranger, a trick that made the very cold their ally. Wet blankets, freezing cloth into walls against the wind, deck groans. Blocks creak, the hiss of water flung from a bucket. It sounds like madness. Soak your bedding and thank the winter for finishing the job. But pirates learn from trappers and whalers, from hard men who knew the Arctic like a map of scars. Water, in a proper gale, is a mason. It will build for you, if you ask the right way. They dipped blankets, sailcloth, spare shirts, sometimes their own coats, into seawater. They snapped them like pennants, flung them over lines and rails, watched the brine sheath them in glass. The cloth stiffened, first a shiver, then a crinkle, then a pain you could rap with knuckles. 2 sheets lashed and an L broke the wind like a cliff. 3 made a shelter that swallowed a lantern's heat and fed it back to the men crouched within. A frozen tent, light as air until you touched it, and then it was iron. The ship grew strange that winter. Corridors of ice where rope once swung free, small blue rooms that clinked when the hull flexed. Timing was everything. Too wet and the weight tore a grommet from the canvas. Too dry and the wind sliced through, laughing at your labor. The master of sails became a sculptor, eyes narrowed, palm tasting the air as if it were soup. Now, he'd call, and the crew would hoist, and in minutes the ship held new walls, sharp and bright as blades. Inside, men exhaled little suns. A tallow lamp hung safe low, its hissing wick hallowed by frost. Card slapped a barrel lid, a whisper of prayer for a wife who hated the sea, a joke so bad it was better than rum. Of course, there was a cost. The blanket you froze became a wall, not a bed, and dawn demanded you break your own house. Boot heels cracked ice, knuckles reddened. Cloth thawed under arms and against chests, steaming like a horse after battle. Yet for those hours, the wind lost its oath, and on a night when the North Atlantic roared like a beast, stealing back breath as soon as it left your mouth, that was victory enough. Her wind falls for a beat, then returns, thinner, colder. Meanie musteries ride the cold with the crew. Who slipped into the powder room last night and left the latch just shy of shut? Who feeds the galley stove when the cook sleeps? A kindness, or a theft of fuel we cannot spare? And what is the sound under the foredeck? Not rat, not rope, not wave, something heavier breathing. You can't fight winter with stone alone. So the men made pacts with the living, sleeping with animals, a pact of breath and bone soft bleat, hoof scrape, a dog's 2 quiet barks, and then, a sigh, goats for milk, pigs for meat, chickens for eggs. Pirate ship carried its own small farm when fortune allowed. In winter, those animals became more than rations waiting for a knife. They became blankets with heartbeats. Here Betsy, a gunner would whisper, coaxing a goat to the lee of his hammock. The goat wouldn't climb in, proud little sovereign, but she would lie against the sling, warmth soaking through canvas to shivering calf. A cat would choose a throat or a sternum, purring like a distant drum. Dogs, the best of them, learned the night rotation, curling where the watch changed, giving each man an hour of heat. It wasn't clean. Nothing about survival at sea is clean. Chaff and dung and the slick tang of animal breath mixed with the human stew, sweat, tar, wet wool, old fish. But try speaking of cleanliness to a man whose fingers can't button his coat. Some crews set rules, the animals slept dry, men took turns, the bilges stayed off limits for livestock. Other crews let the winter write the law. Whoever earned a beast's trust kept it for the season. Bonds formed that no captain could predict. A boatswain swore his pig saved his life in a gale. She kept me from quitting the world, he said, with that ridiculous snore. When the day came to sharpen knives, men looked at their companions and chose biscuits instead. And if you think pirates had no softness left in them, listen closer. On a night blown hollow with cold, you'll hear a man thank a goat. You'll hear another apologize to a hen. You'll hear a dog's tail tap wood in the dark and a laugh crack open like a thaw. Still, animals were not furnaces. They could not heat a whole watch or fend off a storm that reset the marrow. For that, pirates heated the earth itself. Hot sand, hot stones, portable suns in sacks and socks and scrape of shovel. The clack of riverstone into a pot. Landfall in winter gives a ship more than shelter. It gives a beach worth more than silver. Not for treasure, for sand, for stones that have slept under sky and learned patience. Crews gathered riverstone, not slag that would spit and shatter, but rounded veterans from stream bits. And they filled iron kettles until the handles whispered pain into palms. They shoveled sand into tins, into spare socks, into patched canvas bag. The galley fire ate the cold out of them. Water sizzled when a cook flicked a drop to test the heat. Then came the careful dance. Wrap the bag in cloth. Nest a stone under the foot of a hammock. Tuck a smaller rock, the size of a fist, into a coat at the waist where blood runs close to the skin. It looked like ritual, and it was. A ritual of not dying. The trick, slow release. Too hot and you blister a thigh in your sleep. Too cool and you've wasted wood and time. Experienced hands could tell by the sound, not just the hiss of a water touch, but the tiny grain sigh of sand adjusting inside cloth. A ship at anchor in a lee cove became a winter spa built by thieves. Rocks glowing in the mine, bags passed from man to man, steam curling from folds like ghost flags. And when sails cracked full again, those same stones cooled in barrels. The memory of heat sleeping until fire woke them once more. Of all the pirate inventions, this was the most humble, and one of the most perfect. The earth taught to give back warmth on command. No smoke, no smell, no begging a goat for one more hour. Yet not every watch could spare the galley, not every night offered land. What then, when fingers numb to bone must still pull lines and tie life to canvas? Smoking pipes, tiny hearts in the storm match strike. Draw, the soft animal thrum of men exhaling together. Heat tobacco was currency, comfort, and sin. A pipe was more than a vice, it was a pocket fire that didn't ask permission. The bowl warmed the palm, the stem heated the lips and teeth. A man could tip the ember toward his cheek and steal a kiss promise of heat between orders. They learned tricks so the sea couldn't steal the coal cup both hands and make a cave. Turn your back to the wind, pack the bowl tight. A brave fool held an ember on a knife tip, sharing flame from pipe to pipe like passing a secret. Share and you live, the captain said on one January run off Iceland, breath white as whale spout. So they shared, not just tobacco but time. A watch measured in bowls instead of bells. 2 draws to the next reef knot, lads, and 3 to finish this cursed splice. It was dangerous near tar, forbidden near powder, frowned on in a gale when one hand must grip a line and the other your life. But in the lee of a frozen blanket, or the shadow of a galley door, pipes made a clan out of men who might otherwise claw at one another for heat. Stories lived in that smoke. Betrayals retold until the edges dulled. Lost treasures described as if they were not lost at all, just waiting in a cove with the sun correctly inclined. Cursed legends given a last ember, a last glow, and then tapped out on a boot heel. Her sealants, only whole groans, a far goal, the slow hum of cold. 7 methods you'd call them. But to the men who survived, they were one thing, a map away from death. Talos sour star, the galley's brick heart, a quiet seat among sleeping gunpowder. Walls of ice that made the wind forget your name, the warm hush of animals trusting you back, stones taught to speak heat, pipes that kept fire where a man could hold it. Each choice had a price, each warmth could burn in a different way. So here is your question, the same one that haunted every winter watch: which danger do you embrace to keep the frost from reaching your heart? Lanterns flicker, distant thunder. A single rope creaks like a question. Because this is only half the tale. Before winter loosened its teeth, one crew would gamble warmth against the one thing a pirate fears most: silence from the wind, silence from the sea, and silence from his own men. And somewhere in that hush a decision would be made: to sleep beside a bomb, to freeze a ship into a glass cathedral, to trade a pig's warmth for a man's revenge, to burn the last tobacco, on a night with no tomorrow. A waves thundering, then silence. The storm rolled on for days, rain lashing like whips, thunder cracking like cannon fire. The men were starving, their rations drowned, their water failed. Some whispered that the ocean itself was cursed, that it had swallowed better men whole. One night, as the lightning carved the sky, Thomas awoke to find a figure standing at the helm, a shadow in the storm. For a heartbeat, he thought it was Edward himself, back from the deep. But when the lightning struck again, the figure was gone, only the wheel creaking, turning by its own hand. Fear sank deeper than hunger. Men muttered of ghosts, of debts unpaid, of curses that never sleep, and yet, no one dared speak Edward's name aloud. But Thomas, he remembered the last words Edward had spat before being dragged below by the enemy's chains. The sea keeps what it's owed. That promise echoed in his skull now. With every wave that threatened to crush them, a wood groans faint whispering beneath the wind. A week later, their sails hung in tatters. Their compass spun madly. They were adrift, neither living nor dead. And then in the mist, they saw it. A ship, silent, blacker than midnight. Its torn sails still billowed though no wind touched them. It glided across the surface as though the sea itself carried it. The crew froze, some dropped to their knees, clutching their rosaries. Others stared, hollow-eyed, for they knew what it meant. It was no ordinary vessel. It was Edward's ship, the Revenant. The very same that had gone down in flame and chain, now risen from the abyss. Captain. One of the men croaked, though no captain remained. Thomas felt his mouth go dry. His heart thundered against his ribs, for standing on that phantom deck was Edward. His eyes burned with salt and shadow. His face was gaunt, his lips curled in a knowing grin. And he spoke, though the storm roared louder than war. They all heard it, every syllable carried on the wind. The sea keeps what it's owed. A silence. Then a slow heartbeat builds. The Revenant vanished as suddenly as it appeared, swallowed by the mist. But the crew was never the same. Some tore at their skin, trying to rid themselves of the salt that burned their flesh. Others leapt overboard, desperate to join Edward or escape him. Only Thomas lived to tell the tale. He drifted ashore weeks later, half mad, clutching driftwood, whispering Edward's words again and again. And those who found him swore they saw chains etched into his arms, as if the sea itself had branded him. Lantern flickers, waves calm, silence. So remember this, sailor. When you take to the sea, with its treasures, its promises, its hunger, know that every tide carries a debt, and some debts can never be paid. Fade, heartbeat slows, then silence. The sea keeps what it's owed, and sooner or later, it comes to collect.